Welcome to the second part on the series on Roman religions in Imperial Rome. This first part of the presentation will look at the Roman view of gods, and this is Susan Hares, your host. Now, the Roman view of gods had a concept of man's manipulation of gods, the Roman sense of the sacred, a hypervigilance for signals or omens from God, a certain attitude to precision Roman rituals, and an attitude on worship and demons. You see, man tries to manipulate God out of fear. Cercius said, "For the doctrines of all was not only suspicion, but where there is a fear of God, even religion piously worships the God." So man feels manipulated by God because the weather, death, sickness seem to be outside of his control. He seeks instead by religion and worship to placate the gods, to manipulate the gods. Pliny the Elder said, "Frail and suffering, the mortal race, conscious of its own weakness, brought about this division, so each could worship separately whatever his need was great." And that explains the view of the Romans as polytheists. They had hundreds of gods, and when they broke them down into small pieces, they could specifically target any of the gods in order to get the needs met by manipulating the gods. And worship was simply manipulation. A Roman sense of the sacred was really, in devotion, is the knowledge and the regard and consideration to the gods. It's just so in De Natura Dictorum. So this is what a Roman did. Depending on what he wants, he approaches the right god in the right way. Romans had a series of gods for key topics, such as crops or children. And the strict rituals were there in a precise form because Romans were at first engineers and legal people. They had strict favors to solicit favor that were specific to a god. They would ask one favor to one, give one thing to another, and it was very precise. And the rituals had contract language. And in a really crucial ritual, one person would read and two people would check the language and the actions. So the rituals were true manipulation. It was based on empiricism to repeat past successes with the gods and hypervigilance to gain future advantage over abnormal phenomena, manifestations, or warnings. So Cercius goes on, therefore, just as a duty to extend the influence of true religion, which is associated with the knowledge of nature, so it is a duty to weed out every root of superstition. For superstition is at your heels to urge you on. It follows you at every turn. It's with you when you listen to the prophet or the omen, when you offer sacrifices or the flight of birds, when you consult an astrologer or soothsayer, when it thunders or lightnings, or there is a bolt from on high where some sort of prodigy is born or made. Since necessary, some of these signs are always given. No one who believes them can ever remain in a tranquil state of mind. This hypervigilance had Romans totally on edge all the time. But Tertullian looks at this from a Christian viewlight and compares the minutiae of Roman worship to the demands of the Mosaic Law, in order to accuse the devil of imitating divine inspiration. Now, he says, Tertullian, in the prescription of the heretic, suppose we wind our minds around the superstition of Numa Pompilius, who is the second king of ancient Rome, who ruled in 700 to 763 BCE, according to Livy. And our best guess at how Livy counted his years. And consider his priestly average and his privileges, his sacrificial status, and the instrument and the vessels of the second, and the curious rites of expeditions. Is it not clear that the devil imitated the same well-known morosities of the Jewish law? And that's the downside, where the Jewish law was to provide a community. Now, you would think that there would be laws and gods, and there wouldn't be demons, but that's not true. Celsius, who is a philosopher that argued against Christians, said, "Perhaps we ought not to despise the opinion of wise men who say most earth demons are taken up with carnal indulgence, blood, odor, sweet sound, and other sensual things, and therefore they are unable to do more than heal the body, foretell the future of men and cities, or do other things to mortal life." The Romans felt they should listen to demons. You can see that that's totally different than the attitude of the early Christians to cast it out. Celsus goes on to say, the learned Greek says that the soulless brute at birth is under the charge of demons. We must either not live and indeed not come to this life, or we may do so on the condition we give thanks and first fruit through prayers to demons who have been set over this world. And that we must do as long as we live, that they may prove good and kind. Notice, this is a total difference. So when the Christians come into Thessalonica or into Philippi, this struggle becomes key, because to the Christians there is one God. It is a loving God. It is not manipulated. God wants to love them. Well, I will pick up more of this in the next presentation when we deal with religion in the daily life of Roman citizens. I'll see you there.